Imagine walking through the wealthiest square mile in Europe. It is nearly midnight on December 5th, and the streets of Knightsbridge, London, are glowing with the warmth of thousands of Christmas lights. For 20-year-old Mohammed Alami and his close friend, the evening was supposed to be a simple celebration of a meal shared. They are young, successful, and moving through a district that is widely considered one of the safest urban environments on the planet. Mohammed is wearing a timepiece valued at £37,000, a significant asset, certainly, but in this neighborhood, it is almost a common sight. What Mohammed doesn't know is that he has been the subject of a calculated, high-stakes observation for over an hour. As he turns into a quiet 20-meter shortcut between the bright storefronts of Harrods and the surrounding residential streets, the atmosphere shifts instantly. In a span of just 8 seconds, a confrontation occurs that will end in a profound tragedy. There are no witnesses in the shadows of that alley, and the surveillance cameras don't reach into its center. When Mohammed emerges back into the light near the Harrods Christmas tree, he is no longer the person who walked in. He collapses in a scene that contrasts the beauty of the holiday season with a sudden, intense loss of life. The initial assumption by the public was simple: this was a robbery gone wrong, a random encounter where a high-value item drew the wrong kind of attention. But as investigators began to piece together the digital breadcrumbs left by the attackers, they realized that Mohammed wasn't just a random victim of opportunity. He had been selected with surgical precision. The question that would eventually haunt the investigators wasn't just who the attackers were, but why they chose this specific moment and this specific person out of the hundreds of wealthy individuals they had encountered that night. As the detectives began reviewing 90 minutes of footage across London's most prestigious streets, they discovered a pattern that would change everything we thought we knew about the psychology of a predator. The investigation by the Metropolitan Police began with a meticulous reconstruction of the night's events through the lens of London's vast CCTV network. Detectives followed the two individuals, later identified as Badir al-Nazi and Asabon Dilbaro, as they embarked on what appeared to be a systematic audit of the city's elite. Starting from northwest London, they navigated the transit system and emerged in Notting Hill Gate just before 11:00 p.m. From there, they began a 90-minute journey through the most opulent neighborhoods in Britain streets, where the presence of immense wealth is the baseline, not the exception. As detectives reviewed the footage, a perplexing behavior began to emerge. The suspects were not acting with the frantic energy of opportunistic criminals. Instead, they moved with a cold, analytical focus. At 10:53 p.m. on Kensington Church Street, they walked within 5 feet of a gentleman wearing a timepiece valued at £50,000. They observed him, assessed his demeanor, and then simply kept walking. Minutes later, near Kensington Palace, they encountered a trio leaving a restaurant, one of whom displayed a gold watch that caught the streetlights with undeniable clarity. Again, the pair slowed their pace, watched the group for a moment, and chose to move on. This pattern repeated 12 distinct times throughout the night. Near Hyde Park Corner, they trailed a couple, where the man checked a watch, estimated at £80,000, more than double the value of the one eventually taken from Mohammed. In Mayfair, they navigated through outdoor dining areas where high-end assets were visible on almost every table. By any logical financial metric, the hunt should have ended much sooner. They had been within touching distance of millions of pounds in luxury items, yet they consistently rejected these targets. It was only at 11:52 p.m. when they spotted Mohammed and his companion leaving a restaurant in Knightsbridge that they finally committed to an act. This investigative revelation shattered the traditional understanding of street crime in the capital. It became clear that these individuals were not looking for the highest payout. They were looking for a specific set of circumstances. The lead detective, while scrutinizing the high-definition replays, stopped focusing on the attackers and began to look closely at the people they had bypassed. He looked for a common denominator among those who were spared. What he found was the first piece of a psychological puzzle. The predators weren't measuring the wealth on a person's wrist, but the level of awareness in their eyes. The investigative breakthrough led Scotland Yard to a chilling conclusion: these hunters weren't seeking a specific brand. They were seeking a specific weakness. This vulnerability quotient is the hidden metric that determines who becomes a target. When detectives scrutinized the individuals who were passed over during that 90-minute hunt, they observed a common shield of awareness. The man with the £50,000 timepiece walked with a purposeful, rapid stride, his head up and his eyes scanning the environment. He projected a sense of being switched on, making him a high-risk target for a quick strike. Similarly, the groups of diners were protected by their numbers. The confrontation with 3 or more people increases the risk of intervention and prolongs the act, which is the predator's greatest fear. In contrast, Muhammad and his friend were the picture of total relaxation. They had just finished a pleasant meal, their minds likely occupied by conversation and future plans. Their guard was entirely down. When they chose to enter the unlit alleyway, they moved from a public, monitored space into a zone of complete isolation. In that moment, they became the perfect data point for the hunters. This psychological framework explains why even world-class athletes have fallen victim to these schemes. Consider the case of a professional boxer who was targeted after leaving a restaurant. Despite his elite physical training, he was selected because of a momentary 3-step gap between him and his companion. In that brief separation, he was isolated, and the presence of a threat rendered his physical prowess irrelevant. The same logic applies to an elite cyclist who was targeted while recovering from significant physical injuries in his own residence. The attackers didn't care about his athletic status. They cared that his broken ribs and the timing of 2:30 a.m. made him physically compromised and isolated. This shift in perspective is what makes the modern crime landscape so unpredictable. If the goal were merely high-value items, the solution would be to hide the luxury. But since the goal is to exploit vulnerability, the risk extends to almost anyone. It suggests that a person wearing a standard, inexpensive timepiece could be targeted just as readily as a billionaire if they appear distracted, alone, or unaware of their surroundings. The watch is simply the excuse for the interaction. The vulnerability is the invitation. To view these events as isolated acts of desperation would be to fundamentally misunderstand the sophisticated machinery operating beneath the surface of the city. What investigators uncovered was not a series of random incidents, but a highly industrialized global trade. In London alone, an average of 21 timepieces are taken every single day. This is a high-volume, high-reward industry that utilizes a specialized division of labor. It begins in the high-end bars and sun-drenched patios of Mayfair, where spotters sometimes traveling internationally specifically for these assignments blend into the background of luxury. These individuals are trained to identify specific models from a distance, often using mobile phones to capture a clear, high-resolution image of a target's wrist. This digital signal is the catalyst for a rapid tactical strike. The moment the image is sent, a secondary team on a moped is already navigating the nearby backstreets. They know the exact table, the exact person, and the exact value of the asset. The strike itself is engineered for speed, often completed in less time than it takes for a bystander to register a disturbance. Once the item is secured, the clock begins a different kind of countdown. The goal is to move the asset out of the local jurisdiction as quickly as possible. Data suggests that a significant percentage of these items leave the country within a 6-hour window, effectively vanishing before a formal police report is even processed through the system. The destination for these assets is rarely a local pawn shop or a street-level fence. Instead, they enter a professionalized black market spanning from Dubai to Singapore and Hong Kong. In these international hubs, the items undergo a process of sanitization. Serial numbers are meticulously removed, and the history of the piece is erased, making it nearly impossible for global databases to flag them as stolen. They are then sold to private collectors who may not be inclined to ask difficult questions about the provenance of a pristine luxury item offered at a competitive price. This global reach explains the dismal recovery rate. For every 85 items taken, typically only one is ever returned to its owner. The criminals are banking on a calculation of low risk and immense profit, knowing that once the asset crosses a border, the trail goes cold for even the most dedicated investigative teams. The judicial resolution to this heart-wrenching case saw the primary individual involved sentenced to a minimum of 27 years, a stark reflection of the gravity of that 8-second encounter. Yet, while the courtroom provided a resolution for one family, the wider industry continued to mirror the same predatory patterns. In early 2024, law enforcement attempted to turn the tables through a sophisticated undercover operation. Officers intentionally projected the exact traits the hunters sought. They appeared isolated, distracted, or physically compromised while wearing genuine luxury assets in the early hours of the morning. While this led to dozens of arrests and a significant localized drop in activity, it also highlighted a sobering truth. Policing can secure a specific street corner, but it cannot monitor the thousands of daily moments where a citizen's focus wavers. This reality has forced even the most influential figures to reconsider their habits. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, despite having the resources to command an elite security detail, opted to leave his timepieces behind after observing a tragic event unfold on his own office surveillance system. The event took place in the very heart of Knightsbridge, an area teeming with private security and high-definition cameras. His realization was profound. Even in the most protected squares of the city, a hunter can find a gap in the armor of safety if they find a person who is momentarily alone or unaware. It is a testament to the fact that no amount of wealth or technological surveillance can replace the fundamental necessity of situational awareness. The statistics tell a staggering story, with tens of thousands of items taken over the last several years, and only a fraction ever recovered. However, the true lesson lies in the behavioral patterns of the predators. They are not simply looking at the brand on a wrist. They are conducting a silent interview of every person who walks past. They are looking for the phone in your hand that keeps your eyes on the screen. They are looking for the 3-step gap between you and your companion. They are looking for the safe feeling that causes you to lower your guard in a familiar neighborhood. Ultimately, safety in the modern landscape depends on reclaiming that focus. The hunt only succeeds when there is an imbalance between the predator's intent and the victim's awareness. By staying in groups, keeping your head up, and remaining conscious of your environment, you remove the very thing the hunters are actually seeking. They aren't looking for a timepiece. They are looking for a moment where you have forgotten to be on your guard. In London, your awareness is the only thing that truly keeps the time